Bien, nous allons donc attaquer la séance des interventions plénières avec le cheminement que nous a présenté Thierry tout à l'heure. Et donc, pour cela, j'appelle John Stewart, fondateur d'ITIL, pour qu'il nous parle de la genèse d'ITIL. Je vous demande de l'applaudir.
C'est ma contribution à l'agilité. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. C'est un grand honneur pour moi de venir à votre conférence parler de l'histoire d'ITIL. Mon français n'est pas bon et donc ce serait une présentation bilingue par la plupart en anglais. Je vous prie de m'excuser. Eh bien, je vais raconter un peu de l'histoire jamais jusqu'ici révélée. Nous allons commencer avec la préhistoire. Il y a longtemps, vers 1960, le gouvernement britannique a pensé qu'il pourrait avoir besoin de peut-être 4 ou 5 ordinateurs. Oui, vous avez bien entendu. Mais par les années 70, il en est sur le gouvernement qu'il pourrait avoir besoin d'un peu plus de 4 ou 5. Donc, il a créé l'agence centrale CCTA, plus tard CCTA, pour centraliser ses achats informatiques. Cette organisation a donné naissance à ITIL par mon équipe et moi. Voici notre immeuble principal au bord de la Tamise à Londres. Or, 1979, quelque chose d'important s'est passé. L'arrivée de Madame Thatcher comme Premier ministre. À ce sujet, je ne dirai absolument rien. Marguerite n'aimait pas la centralisation et donc elle a voulu passer le pouvoir aux équipes sur Terre. Responsibility for buying computers was passed to individual government organizations, meaning they did not have to use CCTA. CCTA continued to exist with a role to improve value for money on government IT expenditure. We developed and promoted use of best practice methods rather than leave it to individual teams throughout the government to invent their own approach. We notably had Prince for project management and SSADM, now long forgotten, for system analysis and design. Moi, j'ai tout appris sur la dépendance sur les IT à l'université de York. Et voici la belle ville de York. Pour les recherches scientifiques, nous avons dû plusieurs fois demander utiliser l'ordinateur sans d'autres utilisateurs. Oh là là. Ces occasions célèbres se sont passées les samedis de 9h à 17h. Mais malheureusement, 2 fois entre 15h et 17h, l'ordinateur ou plus probablement mon logiciel est tombé en panne. Par conséquent, on a dû recommencer le samedi prochain. Très ennuyant. So I got quite excited about reliability and availability and capacity and performance. I was then privileged to work at Newcastle University with its excellent Michigan terminal system, only to leave soon after to join the British government, where IT service performance was patchy, pas très bon. At that time, the government had a penchant for a certain mainframe that wasn't, shall we say, very mature. So I was enthusiastic about taking a job in CCTA, facilitating achievement of service, IT service quality. Pour moi, il y a eu 2 conceptions importantes 1986-7 d'ITIL et de ma première fille. Je travaillais à notre immeuble à Norwich. Le voici, construit par les Britanniques il y a moins de 50 ans. Par contraste, voici la cathédrale tout près, construit par les Français il y a plus de 800 ans. In 1986, I joined a unit in CCTA concerned with IT suppliers and IT infrastructure. My new boss was Pete Skinner in the building I showed you in London. Pete and I soon came up with the idea to develop a standardized approach to IT infrastructure management similar to Prince. This would help organizations to do IT infrastructure management effectively, and their users would get a good service run efficiently. Ah, the naivety of youth. Anyway, thus was ITIL conçu. We were concerned that people were becoming dependent on IT. We had no idea just how dependent they would become. This was well, there were PCs, but it was before they were on every desk and every home. To get approval to proceed, Pete and I were asked to go to a meeting of the board, la direction, il y a presque exactement 25 ans. The very day we were to attend, my daughter was born. So I couldn't go. we had to reschedule. Things didn't go to plan at the next, when we did appear. One of the members of the board said, "This is the craziest project the organization has ever contemplated." And I don't think it was a compliment. But crazy are us, and we carried on. In fact, the chief executive said sorry to me that they were so rude. As to what to develop, we asked 4 companies to advise us: CSC, IBM, ICL, since taken over by Fujitsu, and PA Consulting. The most immediately useful material was from IBM, which provided us with IT service management checklists based on their information systems management architecture. They gave us permission to use these freely. So we issued them quickly as the first deliverable of what we were going to call Government IT Infrastructure Management Methodology. For some reason, we published them on paper that you couldn't photocopy, which was strange, I suppose, for an organization trying to promote good practice. Pete Skinner was keen that we should go beyond checklists to develop codes of practice. These could be used as a basis for training, qualifications, software tools, etc. And we would develop a public domain framework which we would use to encourage development of an open, competitive supply market of supporting services and products. We were also keen that there should be a user group to provide an independent user voice, which started as itSMF and became ITIMF. 10 ans d'itSMF France. Congratulations. ITIL est né. Coverage focused on IT service management rather than infrastructure management, largely under IBM influence. And we came up with a set of titles: service level management, capacity, availability, change, problem management, etc. CSC were keen advocates of service level management as a basis for managing outsourced IT service provision. The service level management thinking in ITIL found its way into UK government contracts when outsourcing of IT later took off in a big way. Pete Skinner also had a unit working on environmental infrastructure, things like air conditioning and fire prevention. He smiled at me and said, "Include them in ITIL, please." And I had to say, okay. And that's the reason there were a large number of books in version 1 that didn't really fit under the service management banner. Between 1989, has it gone? Okay. Between okay, can you hear me now? Okay? No? No? What's the problem, Terry?
It's good?
Uh-huh. Yeah? Okay. Ok, entre 1980... Close to the mouth. Okay. Okay. Ok, entre 1988 et 1992, nous avons publié 30 livres version 1 avec le diamant. Je ne sais pas qui a donné le diamant à itSMF, parce que c'était, it was ours. You know. And we were influenced by Crosby and Deming with Plan, Do, Check, Act, both in terms of what was in ITIL and in the way we developed it. And we were one of the very first UK government units to be certified to ISO 9001. The team and I thrashed out a standardized chapter list for the books based on plan, implement, review. I was lucky to acquire a first-class team with individuals from other government departments, including Brian Johnson, Dave Wheeldon, Ivor McFarlane, people you may have heard of, as well as some other CCTA staff. We had very lively discussions. Shouting may sometimes have happened because we were excited about what we were doing. That's a copy of the cover of some of the early books. The one on the right was the initial style, but CCTA kept changing styles, so we had to keep up with them. We had a genial member of the team in place to look after marketing, a person called Neil Croft. After we'd printed the first volumes ready to sell, we were asked to delay publication until CCTA had finished a set of IS guides, a different set of publications. And the ITIL team was very frustrated by this, as we had something important to give to the world. Neil was a trade union representative, représentant syndical, so was invited to meet our new chief executive, and I asked him to say that we were delayed and please could they let us proceed, which duly happened. We were very proud of the quality assurance we deployed in the book, so it was with some surprise that we learned 6 months after the first publication of service level management that one of the pages was missing. We didn't let our publisher make that mistake again. These are some of our aspirations at the start of the project. Could we sell more than 1,000 copies? I think we did a bit better than that. Widespread use in and out of the UK government, more outside than in actually. Open competitive market, I think so. Qualification scheme, user group, hello. And an international standard. Well, I think ISO 20000 was based on ITIL to an extent anyway. Back to Neil Croft. Neil had met a couple of Dutchmen at a conference and arranged them to meet me at a Norwich pub, the Mischief Tavern. Sadly, a pale shadow of what it was. Actually, one of these Dutchmen wasn't Dutch at all, but English, but he sounded Dutch, Alan Nance. Alan and Martin van Kesteren worked for Pink Elephant. In English, it said you see pink elephants if you're drunk. I don't know, I've never tried it. But this was a young company with young attitudes. Alan and Martin wanted to start providing services based on ITIL in the Netherlands, and we wanted to encourage that because as a government body, we couldn't use our own staff to promote ITIL to outside organizations, let alone organisations étrangères. The Dutch played a huge part in internationalizing ITIL. Pink Elephant set up in Canada and the USA as well as the Netherlands, which led to thriving ITIL-based markets there and proved the route for market development by themselves and others in other parts of the world. Neil Croft and Ruth Carey, who succeeded me on the project, were instrumental in getting the IT Infrastructure Management Forum set up. It was initially based in Norwich, near us. itSMF then set up chapters in various other countries, as you know. We encouraged that, and at one time we actually had a map on the office wall showing every country where ITIL was being embraced. And it was on all the continents of the world, which was very, very odd to us, having started with such small beginnings. In the UK, I'm even told that there were advertisements for ITIL on London taxis and buses, although I never saw them myself. By the mid-1990s, pressure was mounting on us. La Dame de Fer. Although she had resigned in 1990, the government was still following policies that she had started. We were being reviewed for possible privatization, and in fact, the government publisher HMSO, which was based alongside us, did get privatized. We avoided that, but instead became an agency that had to cover our costs by charging for our services. Under that pressure, a new boss wanted us to get out of the methods business, which included ITIL. So we put effort into safeguarding ITIL to make sure it would survive even if we didn't. And we ran a short competition for an ITIL management organization and put the management out to Exin. That arrangement worked well for a while, largely because Exin employed Ivor McFarlane, who'd been on my team, as their man in charge. To be honest, though, the market was probably expecting more leadership from us than we were able to give. We brought the arrangement to a mutual conclusion 2 years later. By this time, Tony Betts was in charge, working to me, and Tony is one of the great unsung heroes of ITIL. The trend was then for a lot of government IT to be either market tested or outsourced, which begged the question, what role is there for ITIL? we considered a version for the client, but another part of CCTA was handling that subject. However, we, with Pink Elephant and Brian Johnson, we published a set of 3 business perspective books where we tried to set out what the business wanted from IT services and needed to know about them. I feel that's an area where ITIL never really took off, though, as a tool for the client, for the business, despite developments for version 3. Tony Betts did perhaps more than anybody else to make sure we could continue to own and develop ITIL by making sure we had income from book sales and exams and training. He could be a pain, though. I remember spending 16 hours with him one day, going to Utrecht for a meeting with Exxon, and he spoke about work the whole 16 hours. Phew. Brian Johnson and Paul Wilkinson came up with the idea of a set of worst practices books. Brian and I used to remark that in everyday life it was astonishing how frequently you would see examples of what appeared to be worst practices designed for the worst possible outcomes. So they put this concept into a book, Not ITIL, which was pretty funny and full of insults and lies about me. There's a cartoon from one of them. I think it says, in IT, we try to fool all the people all the time. In 2000, we merged into the Office of Government Commerce, a body that went on for 10 years, and they published 8 volumes over from 2000 to 2006. In 2006, APMG was announced as the official accreditor of exam institutes and certification authority, and TSO won a competition to be official publisher. These arrangements are coming to an end next year, and the government is considering what arrangements to put in place for future. 2007 was the year the ITIL refresh came to fruition with version 3, which has a much bigger scope than version 2. It was always our intention to encourage as many collaborating organizations as we could to spread the good news about ITIL. So I'm illustrating version 3, not with an official publication, but with a complementary one. Try not to wreck the place. Well, what did I learn from the work on ITIL? Not very much, looking at my watch. First of all, the organization, the leadership isn't always right. If you know you're right, challenge them. My board weren't all in favor of ITIL, but I was lucky enough that the chief executive supported it and my own boss provided the conditions to make it happen. I think I may have been a bit of a dictator, but I also listened, and I think that worked very well. We were a very small organization, constrained by the fact we worked for the government. So we could only expand our influence by working with other organizations who could make money out of promoting ITIL-related products. It's really hard to imagine the scale of global interest when I think back to the very modest beginnings. But ITIL will only stay alive if it remains au courant and if it meets its user needs. How it's taken forward will depend on you and groups like you in other countries, or it should do. If I were ITSMF France, I'd want to make sure my voice was heard in terms of maintaining ITIL's non-proprietary standing, ensuring the users are well represented on a product update, pressing for refreshment to reflect industry realities, and I'd personally like to see ITIL better integrated into the wider toolset of IT-related standards, which incidentally is what my current organisation, IBPI, is dedicated to doing. Merci de votre attention et bonne chance. Et encore une fois, sorry I had to speak in English most of the time. Merci.
Okay. John, un grand merci. C'était un moment fabuleux parce que je pense que comme tous ici, on a appris beaucoup de choses. Et à cette occasion, comme c'est notre 10e anniversaire, c'est le 25e anniversaire aussi de ITIL. Et c'est un grand honneur de vous avoir avec nous. Et à cette occasion, au nom de l'itSMF France, on souhaite vous donner un trophée spécial pour vous remercier de ce que vous avez fait et de voir comment les petites graines que vous avez poussées sont devenues des grands arbres. Donc, John, et on peut apporter le trophée, c'est Louisa. Je crois qu'on peut tous l'applaudir. Nous ne serons pas là sans des gens comme John. Merci John. Bonne journée. Guillaume, on enchaîne.
Je vais récupérer le micro. Merci. Une bonne journée ne serait pas une bonne journée sans quelques incidents techniques. Merci encore à John Stewart pour cette présentation de ce que fut la jeunesse d'ITIL et donc de son message quant à la nécessité de continuer, de l'entretenir, de le faire vivre et de l'adapter à tout ce que le contexte impose de nouveau au fur et à mesure du temps.